Welcome to this explainer. If you're tuning in today, you might be carrying a quiet, heavy burden. Maybe you've always felt a strange sense of friction in your daily life, just this vague feeling that simply existing and interacting with others is somehow way more difficult for you than it seems to be for everyone else. Or perhaps you're on the other side of this. Maybe you have a partner, a friend, or a coworker, and your conversations with them always seem to end in misunderstandings, no matter how hard you both try. Well, whatever brought you here, I want to validate those feelings right out of the gate. That interpersonal friction, it's real, it's exhausting, and you are absolutely in the right place to start making sense of it.
Have you ever felt like you just aren't good at talking to people? It's a really common pain point, isn't it? You try to make a simple, straightforward point, but somehow the other person gets offended. Or maybe your partner constantly talks about their own interests without ever pausing to ask about your day, leaving you feeling completely unheard. These constant conversational missteps can really make you wonder, is it me? Am I just bad at this? Well, medical insights reveal that for many adults, these struggles aren't just a lack of social grace. They're actually subtle signs of an underlying neurological difference.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the hidden struggle. Then, we'll explore the 5 characteristics of these conversations. And finally, we'll cover some actionable solutions. So, starting with Section 1, the hidden struggle, specifically unnoticed adult developmental disorders. Now, you might be wondering, just how common is this? According to medical data, autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, affects approximately 1 in 100 people. To put that into perspective, ADHD affects about 1 in 30, and when you factor in people who might fall into a sort of gray zone, we're talking about a massive portion of the population. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is this. If you've been feeling isolated by your communication struggles, you need to know that you are absolutely not alone. Literally millions of people are navigating the exact same invisible hurdles every single day.
So, what exactly are we talking about here? Autism spectrum disorder is fundamentally a developmental condition. It's based on innate differences in how the brain actually functions, and this leads to unique cognitive profiles. Basically, it's a completely different way of perceiving, processing, and reacting to the world. It is incredibly important to understand this with absolute compassion. This is a neurological trait. It's just a unique way the brain works. It is not a character flaw, it's definitely not a lack of effort, and it is certainly not a moral failing. You can think of it simply as a different operating system.
But if it's an innate, lifelong condition, why are so many people only getting diagnosed as adults? Well, this timeline explains it perfectly. In childhood, the traits of ASD are often masked. A child might just be seen as a bit quirky or shy, and, crucially, they have a massive support system of parents and teachers buffering them from the outside world. But then comes early adulthood. You enter the workforce or get married, and suddenly the communication dynamics become incredibly complex. That childhood support system is gone, and the social demands absolutely skyrocket. This often leads to a breaking point. Individuals experience severe trouble at work, which piles on the stress, eventually leading to mental health crises like depression or adjustment disorders. And it's usually at this breaking point, sitting in the doctor's office for stress, that the underlying ASD is finally noticed.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 5 characteristics, we're going to look at the specific traits of ASD conversations.
Here's a quick mental roadmap of the 5 specific traits we're about to explore. We have unique word choice, unique gestures, blunt speech, the 1 to 10 explanation, and one-sided monologues. As we go through these, I want you to frame them in your mind not as mistakes but as mismatched expectations. It's literally just 2 different communication styles bumping into each other. Let's start with our first trait, unique word choice. People with ASD often process and learn language a bit differently. Rather than picking up the natural, casual conversational flow from their peers, they often learn language from books, television, or specific reading materials. Because of this, their vocabulary can sound highly specific, unusually formal, or even overly complex for a casual setting. For example, instead of just saying, "I can't forgive this," they might use a highly formal phrase, like using a strict 4-character idiom in Japanese, or saying, "This is absolutely inexcusable" in English, right in the middle of a totally casual setting. They aren't trying to sound arrogant or smart. They just have a very strong desire to find the exact precise word that perfectly matches their internal feeling.
Trait number 2 involves nonverbal quirks. Because communication isn't just about the words we say, right? It's about our gestures, our expressions, and our eye contact. For someone with ASD, these nonverbal elements are processed very differently. Because expressing emotion outward can be challenging, their facial expressions might appear completely flat, leading others to describe them as robot-like. Eye contact is another major hurdle, and it tends to go to extremes. They might completely avoid looking at your face altogether, or they might stare at you so intensely that it actually makes you feel uncomfortable. Even gestures can either be entirely absent or surprisingly exaggerated. But again, this isn't intentional rudeness, it's simply a difference in nonverbal processing.
Trait number 3 is blunt speech. People with ASD generally have a really strong dislike for ambiguity and a very strict adherence to their own internal sense of justice and logic. So they say exactly what they think. Now, depending on who is listening, this gets interpreted in wildly different ways. A close friend might view this blunt honesty as incredibly genuine and refreshing, but in a workplace setting, a coworker might view that exact same bluntness as rude, offensive, or even aggressive. Because individuals with ASD often struggle to intuitively imagine how their words will make the other person feel, they prioritize stating the objective truth over protecting social harmony, and that frequently leads to accident and workplace friction.
Trait number 4 is what experts call the 1 to 10 explanation. Just imagine a standard workplace scenario. A boss asks an employee for a quick update. Instead of giving the key takeaway, the employee with ASD starts at step 1 and meticulously explains every single detail all the way to step 10. They struggle to filter out what is essential information and what is just trivial. This makes standard workplace communication, like the Japanese concept of ho-renso, which stands for report, communicate, consult, incredibly difficult. The employee is just trying to be thorough and precise, but the boss gets wildly frustrated thinking, just get to the point. Furthermore, because they state these facts so flatly, it can sometimes sound like they're talking about a problem happening to someone else, rather than taking personal ownership.
And our 5th trait is the one-sided monologue. Often, an individual with ASD might be quite quiet or seem totally disinterested in general conversation. Standard small talk just feels entirely pointless to them. But the very moment the topic shifts to one of their specific, intense special interests, a switch flips. They will suddenly talk nonstop. And because of that difficulty in reading nonverbal cues we mentioned earlier, they completely miss the listener's polite but bored facial expressions. They're simply so hyperfixated and joyful about sharing this detailed knowledge that the two-way street of conversation turns into a one-way highway. I think we've all been trapped in a conversation like that. But here, it's important to remember it's driven by pure hyperfixated joy rather than a lack of caring about you.
And that brings us to Section 3, Actionable Solutions for Smooth Conversations.
Tip 1 is all about mastering those nonverbal cues to show you are actually listening. If you're someone who struggles to make a natural smile, like if it just feels forced or impossible, don't panic. Step 1, just nod. Nodding is a highly effective, super clear signal that you are engaged. Step 2, if direct eye contact feels like an overwhelming amount of pressure, don't look at their eyes. Look at their nose or their mouth. Seriously, the other person won't know the difference, and it drastically reduces your stress. And step 3, to avoid that intense staring effect we talked about, make a conscious effort to occasionally just look away. These are small physical adjustments, but they can completely change how your attentiveness is perceived.
Tip 2 is the pre-speech pause. This is specifically designed to manage that blunt honesty. Step 1, when you feel the urge to state a really blunt fact, stop and count to 3 inside your head, or just take a deep breath. Just create a buffer. Step 2, use those 3 seconds to quickly think about the outcome. Ask yourself, if I say this, will it make my coworker angry? Step 3, choose a milder expression. Now you might be thinking, I have no idea what a milder expression is, and that's totally okay. Experts highly recommend writing down your typical blunt thoughts and showing them to a trusted, understanding colleague or family member. Let them help you translate your blunt truth into a softer, more socially acceptable phrase. Over time, you'll actually build a mental library of milder expressions you can pull from.
Finally, Tip 3, master the art of listening. Small talk is famously difficult for individuals with ASD because, frankly, it feels meaningless. So, step 1. When you are forced into small talk, stick to the ultimate safe topics, like the weather or harmless recent news. Because honestly, who actually likes small talk anyway? Step 2. Try to focus on one-on-one chats whenever possible. Large group conversations are chaotic for sensory and social processing, so smaller is better. And step 3, don't force yourself to drive the conversation. You do not have to be the one talking. Simply being a dedicated, nodding listener builds a tremendous amount of social affinity and warmth, all without the immense pressure of having to find the right thing to say.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Communication is, by definition,
a two-way street. Yes, individuals with ASD can practice these tips to smooth out their interactions. But what about the rest of us? How can we build a society, a workplace, and a home life that doesn't just tolerate, but truly understands and embraces these unique conversational traits? What if we valued that blunt honesty and actually had a little patience for the 1 to 10 explanation? By understanding the source material of human neurological differences, we all become better communicators. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating topic today. Keep learning, keep listening, and I'll catch you next time.